All right, everyone, let's finish off this mobile version of our recipes site. So just to recap, in the last video, we got our widths taken care of, and we got the things that needed to be set to 100% set that way so that they weren't those fixed numbers. Because remember, when we use fixed widths like we had in the container and like we had in the H1, which we got rid of down here in our app media query, those work well for larger screens because look, I mean, this looks really good on a standard size browser, but you get that down to a mobile version and it's just not what we're looking for. So we had to override those with full kind of responsive widths on the container and the H1, and we also just updated our normal CSS and added these center top calls on the H1 and on the recipes rule to get our images centered so that they looked proper. So just with that simple rule, all being applied to screens with a max width of 320 pixels. So this is going to be iPhone and below, basically any handheld device at that pixel width. And the only thing left that we really have to take care of is the video. And if you look in our HTML, our video has a width and height already set. And we want to leave that because this is going to give us the proper dimensions when we're working with this on large screens and desktops. But what we want to do is in our responsive, and note that this is in a video tag, so this is HTML5 video, so we can use our video tag there. So in our media query here, we want to add a rule for videos, and we will also want to set that width to 100%. Let's see what we get here. All right, there we go. The height is still a little off, so the other thing we can add here is an inherit property, and what that will do is it will just inherit the original width of the element, so it'll size it and scale it properly with 100% width, and now our video will play. And in fact, on an iPhone it actually cuts back to the YouTube player, to the video player, so we'll leave that alone, but it still looks a lot better. And the only other thing I might do here is on the Cswd house seasoning, because this is always going to wrap on a smaller device, I might, so let's see, H2, might want to add, actually let's see what see if there's any padding on top of that H2. There isn't. So that's just the article height. Yeah, the margin on the article is a little high on the mobile device. So if we go to this, we come over to our article, that could actually be made a little bit smaller. So let's add a new margin of, let's try 240. And see what that does. There we go. That's better. So nice and centered, and everything looks good. So now we have a nice little mobile experience for our recipes site, which was quick and in not a lot of code here. So let's see if we take this out. Let's copy, delete, save, and refresh. So you can see kind of where we started from. And if we even went and took the we took the meta viewport tag out, it would just look like this. And then if we put that back in, and there you have it. So the other cool thing about this iPhone simulator is that we can look at other devices. So we can come up here and look at our iPad and see what that looks like. See if we need to make any additional changes. And it doesn't look like it. That actually looks pretty good. So this is taking none of these rules because we're at a larger screen width here with the iPad. But what it is taking into account is our viewport up here. So our meta tag. and it's sizing it properly, so we're still getting a good look on the iPad. Now, the other devices we can look at here are our Retina devices. So these are newer screens. These are kind of the high DPI screens, and they're kind of represented here. It looks like a giant iPhone, but this is in fact an iPhone. So let's see if our recipe site is up. It's really big. So that still looks pretty good. It's still rendering properly. There's some tricks to working with high DPI websites and screens. We're not going to get into that. If you'd like to learn more about that, just look up at 2x or high DPI for screens that carry that. There's not quite enough of them out there yet to really have to worry about it, but I would say in the coming the coming year or so, that will become important. So you'll want to make sure you're working, or you're at least familiar with the high DPI stuff. But the iPhone simulator is also kind of cool for checking out different versions of the iPhone and the iPad. So there you have it. This is a responsive. It's not completely responsive. You'd need a little bit more work to deal with other device sizes depending on what your audience is. This might need to go from a cell phone all the way up to a large flat screen. But for our purposes, sometimes you just need a nice little mobile version of the site, and a lot of times you can get less than 10 rules and have a great looking site. So this is the mobile version of our recipe site using media queries and our meta name viewport. And this is kind of pulling from some of the things that we saw in the Twitter Bootstrap library that we worked with last week.